Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about what I'll be league starting in patch 0.2, which is Crossbow Amazon. Now, last league, if you remember, I played Explosive Shot with Storm Burst rounds, and it was personally my favorite build. Basically, I got nerfed 3 or 4 times on my first few builds. I played Gas Arrow, Gas Grenade, all the trigger stuff, and then I kind of settled into this at the end of week 1, and I couldn't have been more happy. I basically combined Explosive Shot with Storm Burst rounds and kind of had 3 dragons to glue it all together, make Explosive Shot be able to shock, get into Storm Burst rounds, big damage. Now, there have been extensive changes, and almost every single build has been nerfed, and Crossbows actually got buffed. Now, some of the skills less than some others. We're going to talk about all that, but in general, if it comes to who got away percentage-wise the best, I would say Crossbows pretty significantly. Now, huge disclaimer in case you haven't really been aware of the situation over the last few days. GGG basically put out the patch notes like yesterday for whenever I'm recording this, and then they did not show us what the damage number of the skills were, so everybody was confused. And as I'm recording this, I just woke up and I had these numbers for like an hour. So I'm literally working off of that, and a lot of it will come through updates in the first week. Plus, I will not be able to completely finish all my POBs. If you want to watch that, I will be doing that before league start in the next few hours over on twitch.tv/Palsteron. But just so you know, it's not going to be a finished product like I can usually do if I have time to test stuff out. So do take that into account. Now, the first point I want to talk about will be Crossbows in general. So what happened to the overarching archetype, and then specific crossbow skills. I'll pick out a few that I'm very interested in and kind of show you what changed and why I would play this or why I would play that. Then we're going to talk about Amazon versus Deadeye. Obviously, we just had the Huntress release, and we got to go over Amazon because that is most likely what I will be playing on league start. And then also some resources, some pops I'll show you around. But like I said, Path of Building as of this recording is not updated, but I'll show you a little bit also in terms of leveling. Now, biggest thing I want to say before we get into the changes is that the patch notes have been absolutely insane. Builds have been nerfed from between 30% less damage. I've seen 95% less damage. So when I say Crossbows got away really good, that means it got buffed or stayed the same, which is not what you can say for almost any other archetype. That is why I'm so adamant and why I wanted to make this video. That does not mean that I claim this build to be like the new S tier or whatever, because even some old archetypes that got nerfed heavily will still be quite strong. They just got pegged down a little. Now, first, let's talk about crossbow changes in general. Crossbows will now have 2-handed base damage, which will result in approximately 10 to 25% more damage. They also have new base types, but as far as I know, that doesn't really increase the damage too much, at least from what we have from PoE2DB so far in terms of the actual crossbow items. So the new GG one seems to be Desolate Crowbow, which is barely better, so it's barely worth mentioning. Now, worth mentioning though is that on PoE2DB, a lot has been data mined so far. However, the base damage still seems to be the same in the mod section. I don't know if that's going to be adjusted, but as you can see right here, this is what it says in the patch notes, and that would result to around 10 to 25% more damage. The reason this is not an exact number is because it depends on the tier of flat damage you have. It depends on what runes you use. Do you use percentage damage? Do you use base crit damage? But that is round about it. Now, then we have fixed a bug where crossbow reload was not being affected by local attack speed modifiers. If you don't know, attack speed across the board on crossbows actually gives you faster reload, which means that it's a very, very sought after stat, right? Like if you think about crossbows, they have a lot of attack speed and whatnot, but in terms of reload time, it is annoying, right? You're going against the reload time whenever you're done with your magazine, but the more attack speed you have, the faster, so that basically scales with it. However, the mod on weapons, so the local mod on weapons actually did not, which is a pretty big deal because that should mean that if you have a perfect attack speed roll, for example, or whatever in between, you get a more multiplier to your reload speed. I actually didn't know this was a bug, but I would now definitely recommend getting one of those rolls if you can on your crossbow. Now, the last one is actually a little bit of a nerf. This one affects every build that doesn't use this new mount. Fix the bug where skills that allow movement during the actions wouldn't apply their slow. So what that means, I'll put it up in the background real quick here, but basically what this means is if I just tap Explosive Shot, I can literally walk with like no delay. And that has a few reasons because crossbows are mostly regulated by their reload. However, they can reload while walking at 100% speed. And So they're very fast, right? Like the weapon is very fast, so you can just tap, go, and you don't even really feel anything. Like you used to just never press down the button and you would just be extremely fast. Now this is a thing that a lot of people did, even on Spark and whatnot, and it was great, right? Like it made the game feel a lot more fluid, so this will be nerfed across the board. However, for crossbow builds, I feel like it will be a little bit more impactful in terms of feel. Number 2, let's talk about skills themselves. So there are 3 skills I want to highlight here. That does not mean that these are the only crossbow skills, and I wasn't able to look over everything and determine everything, but these 3 are the ones I have in mind right now. Explosive Shot is the one I already played, and this one has 8% less damage from last league. So if you take this into account, it's slightly buffed, which for this patch is pretty damn huge. However, there are a few things. For example, Scatter Shot is nerfed, which is the +2 projectile. Now, is this going to be a big deal in terms of single target damage? No, but in terms of clear, it's gonna be a little awkward. Also, the Huntress and Ranger area kind of lacks AoE. So if you look at how we're probably going to path, so this is how we pathed last league. But if you look at how we're gonna path this league, we're probably going to go up to Monk because they have very efficient crit here and here. So it's going to be quite a bit different, and AoE will be a little bit disincentivized. Also, the 3 Dragons helmet is going to be not available early on, right? You can't really just rely on a helmet, so you're gonna have to shock somewhere else. So I think overall, Explosive Shot will be good in mid-game and might still be best in slot for clear. However, Galvanic Shard might now actually be, in my opinion, better. It was already played. Some people really liked it. It now has 1% less damage with the new numbers, and it doesn't need Scatter Shot or AoE, which, I mean, you could conversely say it can't really use it, but now that it's nerfed or you can't access AoE, that is actually not really a downside anymore. And it doesn't really need 3 dragons, and it can still sometimes shock. And to give you a little bit of extra context, this is basically how Explosive Shot would play, right? You would walk, you would shoot, walk, you would shoot. You already saw it in the intro. Just so I can show you, this is with 0 additional projectiles, and as you can see, the AoE is kind of like this, and this is without heralds, without Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, which I still don't know how good they're gonna work without chaining, but there are only 30 reservations, so we'll see. You can see right here that Explosive Shot has both a projectile part and an explosion part. Both of them do the same amount of damage. The projectiles cannot overlap, but the explosions can. So while Scatter Shot is really nice, it is not necessary. If it's actually worth it damage-wise, it's fine. But it's also nice to not have it because you're not spreading out your damage across projectiles, making your shock worse. You actually have 1 big hit, or in this case, 2. So you can see the explosion is 80% conversion and the normal one is 30. I will also at the end of the video talk a little bit about the old build, right? I'm going to talk about the update to the Explosive Shot build from last league, so you can kind of know what's going on there. But let's talk about Galvanic Shards. Galvanic Shards looks like this, right? You can either hold it down, right? You can see right here, you reload. This is obviously not like, I don't have anything expected to reload speed or anything like that, but that's basically how it looks like. You can also just tap it, right? As we did before. And that is kind of how it looks like. In terms of clear, this is slightly worse than Explosive Shot, but it needs less support. So it's basically a decision, do you want to clear with Explosive Shot? Do you want to clear with Galvanic Shards? One of the upsides of Galvanic Shards as well is you wouldn't have to need the 3 Dragons helmet. You could actually go for a Evasion helmet, which is very, very strong on the new Ascendancy, which we're going to talk about as well. But Explosive Shot is overall my favorite. Galvanic Shards also has the upside of you not really needing 2 bows, which means you can use your offhand for something else. 2 crossbows, and it's also lightning damage. So in terms of, yeah, scaling, it's a little bit easier, and you don't need to twiggle around too much with weapon swap. Now let's talk about the big boy skill though, Storm Burst rounds. If you guys don't know, I'll give you a little bit of a thingy in the background right now. This is how it looks like, and Storm Burst rounds basically needs the enemy to be shocked, and then it has pulses coming from every single projectile. And it is, in terms of DPS, at least for last league, by far the best skill for single target. It is absolutely rancid for clear. You literally cannot clear with it. It does not shock itself, so you cannot just infinitely stack it. You need either Explosive Shot with 3 dragons or Galvanic Shards is usually not enough. You need like Storm Burst Arrow to actually apply a shock. And that is, if you want to play the skill, you need to look at the shock icon, which looks like this. And if the enemy is shocked, then you will get that explosion. Otherwise, no damage. And as of right now, I think the skill is still the best single target, barring any new tech that is going to come out, which we're going to explore. It does approximately 20% less damage. The reason I say approximately is because it's not as easy as just looking at numbers. So basically what they did is they reduced the attack speed, they reduced the base damage. Let me check if I have it somewhere here. Shock burst rounds, there it is. So they reduced the attack speed from 450 to 400, which has two effects. The first one is fresh clip support will not basically unload your clip as fast anymore, so less of a damage buff. However, it also means that you don't hit the reload as often, so that's also a slight damage buff. But yeah, it's like in total, this is like a little bit less damage, so it means slightly less reloads, but yeah. Base damage got reduced, so this one got reduced from 40 to 36, which is roundabout, which is exactly 10% less damage. And yeah, so one other thing though I want to note is last time I played this, the quality actually didn't work, and the quality gives you 7 bolts loaded. So we're basically getting a lot more bolts. That means that fresh clip is better. So overall, I don't even know if this 20% more is true. It's only true if you played it like in the last month or whenever this got fixed. For me personally, from what I had in the clips, it's going to be round about the same damage. Plus, do not forget about this buff across the board for crossbows. If you have never seen this skill, this is how it looks like. Basically a Gatling gun. If you know rapid fire, it's like that, but with lightning. And it has 24 bolts that shoot extremely fast. The more attack speed you have, the faster they get used up, but the faster you also get the fresh clip buff. And yeah, just in general, it is extremely nice. And for how long you can shoot, the reload is really extremely low. So it will feel absolutely awesome on single target. Like I said, for clear, you need either Galvanic Shards, Explosive Shot, or maybe something new. So what will I probably choose? It will most likely be Galvanic Shards and Shock Burst rounds. This is going to be my single target, and then this is going to be my clear, right? So that's how it's probably going to look like. And in mid-game, I'm going to reconsider, once I have 3 dragons, I will reconsider Explosive Shot. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I have some jewels with some AoE. Maybe I will use Scatter Shot, but in general, Explosive Shot has a really nice shock, so you don't have to use Stormcaller Arrow, because one thing you have to do if you go Galvanic Shards is you have to have some better way of shocking. And if you look at Stormcaller Arrow right here, this used to be it, right? It had 800% more shock with 437 base damage, and you can see right here that got gutted, right? So it has 500% more chance to shock, 281%, so it will be a lot less reliable in terms of the shock. However, maybe we find something else. I will still be using a bow on offhand to shock single targets. And most likely what you want to do is you want to get quite a bit of shock duration. I mean, you kind of wanted to do this anyways, right? So magnitude shock, but you also get the shock duration here, 50, 20, 20. So that will make the shock, I don't know, 10 seconds or something. So yeah. In mid-game, I will probably look for an alternative. I'll probably try to get 3 dragons and just shock that way. One thing you do have to note, though, is that if you go Amazon, you will be crit-based, right? So I have this right here. This will not be 56%, by the way. I just saw that Winter got nerfed. It will be like 34%. Whenever you hit that crit, you're not just going to deal that damage. You're going to hit like a big spike, right? Like, for example, here I have 500 crit multi. So it will be a lot easier to shock. You will just kind of have to fish for those crits. And now I want to talk about a new addition to the build, which I'm very hyped about, which is Artillery Ballista. Now, this will not be a Ballista build, don't worry, which might come later down the line if I have really good gear. I just want to tell you that for single target, we have a new kit on the block. We have something to put down that will increase your damage. Now, do I know how much more damage it is? Not really, but I think Artillery Ballista is going to be busted during leveling. Or when I say busted, it's just something you could put down for free damage. So they changed a lot of things. And if you've read patch notes, but you haven't gone down, there are new updates here, new notes. Most of them are nerfs. But Artillery Ballista is actually buffed by quite a bit. I'll go over everything here. So, first up, Artillery Ballista has +2 projectiles. Now, it usually only has 1, and they can all shotgun, which is straight up triple damage. I'll put some footage in the background. This is Artillery Ballista, and here I have Scatter Shot, and it's basically firing an amount of projectiles, and all of those can overlap and mostly will. So, that is a huge buff in general. Some of the other numbers got adjusted, but that's just the baseline. The second thing that got changed is Artillery Ballista has around 40% more damage than before. Now, if you look right here, it will say up top, Artillery Ballista base physical damage scaling now matches that of other totems like Shockwave and Ripwire. So what they did in the past is they gave it less damage simply because it just had more projectiles, right? It would actually hit more. But now for some reason, they've actually given it back the base damage as the others do, which don't have shotgun capabilities. So that's very, very strong. On top of that, they gave you new quality, which provides up to minus 0.4 second attack time. See, Artillery Ballista doesn't use your weapon at all, actually. If you look right here, it has its own attack time, and it has its own base damage, which right now is kind of an issue because you can get a ton of damage on crossbows and everything. But early on, you're not going to have a good crossbow. So this will actually carry you quite a bit, I feel, during some of the stages of campaign. Probably around level, I don't know, maybe 35, 40 whenever I'm going to start using crossbows. It is going to carry you quite heavily, and I'm pretty sure that whenever I get Artillery Ballista is the time I'm actually going to start using crossbows. So you can see right here, right now the quality is 20% increased attack speed, but the minus 0.4 is actually better. It comes out to around about 18% more attack speed. They also made the conversion from 90 to 100%, which is not that big of a deal. I calculated it in as like 5% more damage or something, which is about right. And really big as well, the targeting range got increased, and this was kind of annoying, right? So Artillery Ballista has 6 meters, which sounds like a lot, but it has a little bit of a delay. So it now has 8 meters, which is actually slightly off screen to the top, which is huge. So that means it will just feel a lot better. However, to compensate for these crazy buffs, it also got 37% less base damage. So if you look right here, Artillery Ballista doesn't just have the flat damage. It also has the base damage, and this used to be 296. It is now, as far as I know, 185%, just so you're aware. Now, that means that in total, coming out, it will deal approximately 177% more damage at level 20. Before that, even a little bit more. I would say around about triple. And these +2 projectiles are basically what accounts for that. And Scattershot getting nerfed from 20% less to 35% less really saved the skill. Otherwise, it would have been, well, GG. So that's pretty huge. Now, I'm not going to claim that this is going to be a huge deal because Artillery Ballista was kind of meh before, but I'm just saying it is now one part I'm going to experiment in this build, and I think it's worth putting down at bosses, and it might even be worth putting down while mapping just to kind of like target enemies off screen. We'll have to see. One thing I also want to say is that if you're using 3 dragons, it is fire damage, full fire damage, so it can theoretically apply shock. So maybe, I don't know like we don't have exact numbers on how the shock formula works. The bigger hits, the better, but you can still, although rarely, shock with smaller hits. So if you put down 2, 3 ballistas or whatever, are you actually going to apply shock for Stormburst? Because if that's the case, there is a chance that you're going to be able to put them down at bosses. They're just going to repeatedly shock, and you can literally just, I don't know, spray away with shock burst rounds over and over. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's something that you should keep in mind. Next, let's talk Amazon and why I'm going to Leaguestart it. First reason, it's new. Sue me. Second reason, Critical Strike. After the last video, I was actually not sure how the Critical Strike will be, especially early. But after the last CGD video, he showed that he actually took it during campaign, and his crit went up to like 32, sometimes even 44%, which basically implies that it depends on what the enemy is, how much crit you're gonna get, which means that early on, you don't need all that much accuracy. You're just gonna scale your dexterity anyways, maybe get a little bit of extra from the tree, and you should have like extremely good crit. In fact, it is maybe even better than we expected, which is kind of cracked. I don't know what they're thinking with this node, but I will definitely want to be here to look at it. So Critical Strike is going to be the first one I'm going to pick up. Now, after that, it's not crazy, but just so you understand, this node alone will probably more than double your damage if built correctly. So that's already better than most other Ascendancies in terms of damage as a whole with like full points. Now, in terms of the second point, most likely I'm going to take Predatory Instinct or Izmiri Brew or Leech, depending on how those are going to change. But yeah, Izmiri Brew if I need the mana. Life Flasks also recover mana. Mana Flask also recover life. Big question mark on how this works. For example, can I press my Life Flask even though my life is full, but my mana isn't? Big question mark because Life Flasks recover a lot more. So they could like shoot your mana up like this. Otherwise, Predatory Instinct, very strong against rare and unique enemies, 50% more damage against open weakness. If you don't know, open weakness kind of looks like this, and while the enemies is on this open weakness, you deal 50% more damage. It seems like it's up around about 40% of the time, so this would translate into average of 20% more damage against rares and bosses. And after that, I'm most likely going to go for Stalking Panther in endgame. Evasion rating from equipped helmet, gloves, and boots is doubled, which is a pretty big deal. However, you have the downside evasion rating from body armor is halved. But what we're going to do in endgame most likely is we're going to go for a full energy shield body armor and then basically support that with just evasion everywhere else. And just with this body armor alone, even early on, I can get around about 1.4k ES and in endgame around about 2 to 3k. And that's a pretty big deal because Wind Dancer just got nerfed. However, Ghost Dance still looking hot, right? So Ghost Dance is going to give you really good recovery. And then let's say Asmeri Brew sucks, maybe Leech sucks. I don't know. If these all suck for some reason mechanically, I'm probably just gonna go for the kill, which gives you skill speed and movement speed while enemies have open weakness. This is not great. It would be like the last Ascendancy and like 10% more damage. The main reason you go for this Ascendancy is the critical strike node, which is so good that it carries like 3 to 4 nodes from other classes. It is just fantastic. And as I said, you need to shock for shock burst rounds. So having these spikes of crit damage is going to way easier apply shock, having these like spikes and downs, right? Like rather than the steady damage. And there's also a chance that we use Elemental Infusion, which basically grants your attacks a lot more damage. However, it needs to consume charges, and then you can only do it for 2 hits. So if that was the case, we would definitely go Explosive Shot and not Galvanic Shards, because Galvanic Shards just has too many hits. It would just consume these way too fast. So there's also an off chance off of that, but we'll have to figure out how to get charges. I know there's some tech out there. I don't know if it can fit into the build without making it too squishy, so we'll have to see that as well. Now, as for Deadeye, which I played last league, there's actually a good chance it's still the best Ascendancy. It is, however, not new, and I also want to try out all the new stuff, which could be completely broken. So, yeah, if you want to go safe, I will be updating the Maxroll guide. I don't think it's going to be able to come out before the league starts, because I still need to test stuff. The support gems are not even out there, right? Like I saw, for example, there's Trinity support and whatnot. So, I mean, it's impossible for me to update. I would probably say in week 1, but if you want to go Deadeye, nothing really changes, right? You go point blank into +1 projectiles, into Gathering Winds, into Wind Ward. So in terms of speed, you're going to be faster, right? Like you have the 10% movement speed from Gathering Winds. You have a lot more attack speed. You don't have to crit though, so you're going to have to look for opportunities to better shock. However, I think Deadeye is an absolutely great Ascendancy. As for resources, I've made a preliminary POB, which is completely worthless because I don't have the tree right now, so I don't know. There could be like a lot of clusters that I will take later, but you can see right here, I actually made a weapon swap as well, right? Like now we're not pathing all the way to the left. We're actually pathing up because I think that evasion, energy shield after the acro nerfs are just incredibly good, right? You actually go for Ghost Dance. You don't have the downside of acrobatics cutting into your evasion rating. So I think these, like the Monk starting area is just so goddamn broken. You have so much crit up here, especially these wheels are just ridiculously strong, which is impossible to get down here. Even the crossbow nodes. I mean, Power Shots is very strong, don't get me wrong, and this could be an annoyance for us later, but there is no way I'm going to path all the way over here. So that is going to be, in general, the way I will go, but this will change like 10 times. So take it with a grain of salt. It's basically just there as like a little bit of guidance. And I guess in terms of outliers, I'm actually picking up accuracy nodes right now, which you will notice because of the Amazon node, which scales crit off of accuracy. And I'm also taking stuff like finesse. Other than that, I'm going for Falcon Dive, which gives you increased attack speed per 250 accuracy. This will not really be good until late game, but it's definitely going to make your build feel better. And do remember that the attack speed also increases your reload speed, so that is doubly good there. And yeah, I have this offhand that is basically for Storm Burst rounds, and it is, yeah, using all the lightning stuff. We're still not critting 2/3 of the time, so Lightning Rod is still incredible. We have the pen, right? So I'm basically going to have 1 crossbow for explosive shot, 1 crossbow for this. I will also put down a Galvanic Shards POB down below. I don't have it finished right now, but there's a huge chance I'm actually going to play Galvanic Shards. So yeah. And yeah, if you follow along, watch the streams, I can now import my characters on Maxroll. So I will just import them over and over every day after I stop. So you guys can kind of, yeah, see that. But as well as that, I will be making daily updates videos, so you can kind of stay up to date. Like I said, this is a very rough thing. This time, I just, yeah, you just can't plan around it. But yeah, let's talk about leveling. So the way people used to level on a ranger is early on, you go Contagion, you put it on an enemy, right? You kill one enemy, they all proliferate and all dies. It seems like that's a little bit dead in the water right now. We'll have to see. What I will say is Stormcaller Arrow, which is what basically everybody was using, got extremely nerfed early on. So it used to be 90% damage, 99% here, and yeah, it used to be 140. So it's like down by 50%. Is this still gonna be the best way? Maybe. It might be back to Lightning Arrow and Lightning Rod. I'm not 100% sure. I don't even know if it's bows. We're gonna have to see how the early crossbows behave. From what we've seen, the early crossbow bases look very good, so there is a chance we're gonna play that. We still have to look into grenades and everything. So basically what I'm saying is it's wide open. And while some of the leveling guides on Maxwell are still up, you have to realize that a lot of these, like none of these can be tested on the new patch, and a lot of the damage numbers have been excluded. If nothing else, I'll probably go Lightning Arrow, Lightning Rod. That might be the safest option. It depends on what bow you find. It depends on what crossbow you find. I will be making some notes here, and I will be updating the video. If you want to watch that over on twitch.tv/Palsteron, I'll be online probably 3, 4, 5 hours before the patch starts to kind of get that going. Now, there were a lot of people asking about a full Ballista build, so I just want to close the video out saying that I don't think it's really viable early on. I think that Ballistas are a very, very strong addition to a roster of skills, which seems to be what they would have done, right? You deal almost triple damage if you don't have any level scaling, but the higher you go now, the level scaling fell off by quite a bit. So if you look at Artillery Ballista right here, this used to be like 800 to 1,500, right? So basically, they spiked the damage like crazy, and then at level, I don't know, I think 34 was the highest you could reach. The damage increase is like 10-20%, but towards early, it's like almost triple. So yeah, one thing you have to realize though is that the mana cost went down quite a bit. I'm not saying it's not possible, and I have a few ideas, but that is going to be for way, way, way later, and I'm gonna need Annoyance. I might need a Megalomaniac because you just can't path here efficiently anymore. The top side is too good for crit, and Amazon is just looking way too hot right now. But that concludes the video. TLDR, I'm playing Crossbows. I'm playing New Ascendancy. Everything in this video is kind of just like, yeah, me spewing some ideas. Do whatever you feel like. Bleed could be good, right? Like, take it as a game release. That is about all I can say. And all I can promise is that I'm going to update you guys every day. And I'm going to update my POBs. And eventually, I'm also going to have a max roll guide out. If you start later, that might be helpful as well. But yeah, in general, hope everybody has a great league start. I was a little bit pissed that we didn't get any info at first, but now I kind of accepted it, and it is actually kind of chill, less expectations, stuff like that. But yeah, would love to see you on stream over on twitch.tv/Palsteron. And otherwise, see you soon. And with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.